Well, thank you very much for having me. An invitation to speak at the Baton Rouge Press Club certainly was one I was excited about, and I love doing these kind of things because I do a lot in the media. I do my own radio show, blogging, a lot of TV stuff, a lot of other appearances, and I work with a lot of journalists, and so being able to come here and speak to the press club certainly was a cool opportunity for me. And y'all fed me lunch, so hard to argue with that. I really love to say that what I actually do is eat and drink for a living, and eating and drinking for a living in South Louisiana is about as good of a job as you can get, and that was kind of one of those, like, my guidance counselor in high school never told me that was a job. I didn't major in that in college, although I came close, I guess. But it's one of those things that I've been able to just pursue my passion and go after the things that I really like to do and find things that interest me and just make a living out of that. And so I really discovered that one of the things that I was the most passionate about was people and culture, but specifically the food and beverage part of people and culture. I never really I love music, but I never really got into music like a lot of people do. And I love the arts, but I've never really been an artist on that level. But I've always enjoyed traveling and meeting people and talking to people and sharing stories and recipes, stories about food and beverage. And every time I travel, I really try to open my eyes to what people in that location eat and drink and what they do and what customs and culture they have surrounding food and beverage. And certainly Louisiana is just one of the culinary capitals for that kind of stuff. Our culture revolves so well around food and beverage that it's made it really easy to have essentially make a career celebrating that culture. And that's really what I try to do here at home, when I travel around the state, and then when I get to travel out of the state or even out of the country, is really keep that focus on what are people eating and drinking, why are they eating and drinking that, where does that come from, who kind of came in and settled that area that brought those traditions with them, what native ingredients do they have that influence their cooking as opposed to other cooking. And you see a lot of the same ingredients around the world when you really study cuisines, but they're always cooked in different ways and put together in different fashions that create different flavors. And so just being able to explore that has been a lot of fun, and certainly being focused on promoting and celebrating Louisiana's rich culinary heritage and history, a big part of what I do. So as Bill mentioned, I learned how to cook throwing tailgate parties for LSU football, which was a great way to really kind of just get thrown in the ring of cooking for large groups of people. As a college student, I was cooking for what in the early days were 50 to 100 people that later grew to a party that was 200 or 300 people, and we would cook huge cast iron cauldrons of red beans and rice or gumbo or alligator and white beans or wild boar or sauce pecan or whatever the case might be, but we would feed the masses with that, and then also a lot of grilling and barbecuing and outdoor deep frying. And so a lot of those things are really, that's how I learned to cook, and so I keep a lot of that in my culinary style now. And so a lot of people that talk to me about Government Taco, and I'll circle back to that in a second, but Government Taco is my first restaurant that's now open in White Star Market on Government Street, and it's a taco shop, but by no means is it ever intended to be, or is it, a traditional Mexican taco shop. We might take some influences from traditional Mexican cuisine and Tex-Mex and Cali-Mex and those kind of things, but really it's a lot of my flavors and the flavors that my team comes up with served in the form of a taco. And so we have a lot of Louisiana flavors, a lot of southern flavors, a lot of that kind of hunting and fishing and Louisiana tailgating kind of flavors that we adapt and serve into the form of a taco. And that's really exciting for me. When I went to LSU, twice, though I did get 2 degrees. I majored in economics and political science, and then I got a master's in political science. And then I said, well, I want nothing to do with politics for the rest of my life now. That's what I learned. I got out of that, and I taught high school for a couple years, and then got a job working for the state. And then that's when I really got into the food world through writing. And Government Taco, I was asked earlier where that name comes from. Well, 1, it's on Government Street in Baton Rouge. 2, Baton Rouge is the capital city, and so there's a lot of governmental and political things happening here. And then 3, it's me finally putting my 2 degrees in political science to use, doing something that everybody can agree on, which is tacos, hopefully. So it's a lot of fun. I was asked to speak a little bit about food and the holidays, and obviously in Louisiana, as with certainly a lot of my experiences in America and anywhere that you travel as well, this time of year, food means a lot to people. The traditions that revolve around the holidays, from Thanksgiving all the way through Christmas, and then really to New Year's with the black-eyed peas and the cabbage and those sorts of traditions. This is where we see a lot of those things come together, and it's fascinating to me to see what those dishes are. I mean, the green bean casseroles and the candied yams and things like that are the same in so many places, and then you find some people that just do it a little bit different and a little bit different here and there. But the kind of dishes that people in New York and people in Washington State and people here are eating some of the same foods that one time of year, but maybe doing it in a slightly different ways. But then you talk about that like sweet potato casserole kind of thing, and there could be a grandma in Iowa and somebody in Nevada that both put marshmallows on top of their sweet potato casserole the same way. And it's like there's those dishes like that just have like become American staples that we eat once a year, which is always I don't know. It's fascinating to me. I never really kind of cook like that. I'm really big on a lot of traditions, but then I like my traditions to make sense. There's some of those that I never really got into. That was just like, oh, it's not Christmas without that one dish. It's like, it's fine with me to not have some of those dishes. And green bean casserole is another one of those when people are just taking the canned cream of mushroom soup, and I don't get that one. I try to make my own, and actually I did a TV segment doing a green bean casserole of my own where we actually made essentially our own cream of mushroom soup. We made a bechamel sauce and then incorporated some mushrooms into that, and then poured it over some blanched green beans, and then baked it off in the oven, and it came out really great, to the point where I don't think I'll ever buy another can of cream of mushroom soup. But other people might want to, and that's their tradition, and they put the little French fried onion things on the top, and but those are the same everywhere. You can go around the country and find the same things. And then when you travel a little bit more and you get to see what other people are doing, I think that's one thing that maybe I would like to do one day. And of course, with traditions and things like that, and I want to be home with my family for the holidays, but one day I would love to go experience other countries or other people's holidays. What are they doing for Christmas? Because Christmas especially is one of those that is truly celebrated around the world. Some places a lot more than others, but there's got to be a lot of other traditions out there that I would love to explore. We did one episode of Food Network Star that I was on, that everybody picked a holiday and had to cook a meal that kind of represented what their family did for that holidays. And so I had Thanksgiving, and I made a boudin stuffed quail with a blackberry bourbon sauce. And that blackberry bourbon sauce came from one of the first recipes that I ever had published, and that won a big tailgating cook-off in 2010. And Ginger was talking about it earlier with the blackberry bourbon bone-in Boston butt that I did for a Tony Chachere's tailgating cook-off in 2010 that ended up winning that whole thing, representing LSU. And so I made that blackberry bourbon sauce with a boudin stuffed quail as kind of a Thanksgiving dish, putting a bird on the plate, and it went over really well there. That's still one of my, when I think holidays now, like that, I want that dish. I don't need the turkey. I want that quail. And it also reminds me a lot of my childhood of growing up hunting and fishing with my dad and my family, and doing things like that rather than just getting the store-bought turkey. But those are nice too. Anybody have any questions? I'll open the floor now. I can certainly go in depth about anything that you would like to hear. If you want to hear more about Food Network Star or holiday dishes or anything like that, I'm happy to open the floor up. Yes, sir.
Tell us more about the government street taco. What type of ingredients, since it isn't going to follow necessarily the Tex-Mex, what would you have in a typical one?
Sure.
It's really popular.
So the question's about government taco, and I mentioned that it's not traditional Mexican or Tex-Mex. So what is it? And give us some examples. So our number one selling taco is actually called Clucks and Balances. All of our tacos have governmental puns associated with them. So Clucks and Balances is our chicken taco. It is a smoked chicken thigh that we use my spicy and sweet barbecue rub to smoke it over Louisiana wild cherry wood, is what we're actually using right now because I have some in my backyard. And so it's the smoked chicken thigh over pimento mac and cheese with an Alabama-style white barbecue sauce and then Nashville hot chicken skins. So it's kind of taking a lot of the South, the pimento cheese, the smoked chicken, the Alabama white barbecue sauce, the Nashville hot chicken in the form of chicken skins, and putting that all on one taco. That's really one of our best sellers. Another one that we do that I'll actually be bringing up to Washington, D.C. for Washington Mardi Gras in January. And I've cooked it in New York before as well for some different people with Visit Baton Rouge. But it's called The Catfish Are Coming. And you're supposed to say it like the British are coming, but it's the catfish are coming. And that one is a molasses mustard fried catfish over corn mock shoe with some crispy collard greens and our government hot sauce. And so it's, I mean, that's way more Louisiana. You know, it's like the Louisiana molasses mustard that I make is in the marinade for the catfish, and then we have a very Cajun corn mock shoe on that taco with the fried catfish, the crispy greens, and our hot sauce. So those are some of the ones that you'll get. We have a few more that you know, get a little bit closer to some Mexican influence, but we put our own spin on it as well. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Would you repeat the question, please?
Sure. The question is, who are some of the chefs and kind of people in my industry that I admire and that I look up to? One that has been around Louisiana for a long time, and that it's kind of crazy how, as my career has developed, I realize how he was doing a lot of the things that I'm doing now 30 years ago, 20 years ago. Don't want to age him too much, but Chef John Folse. John Folse is a Louisiana legend of a chef, and as I'm, you know, I do my radio show. He's been on the radio for decades. I'm doing TV cooking segments. He's been doing that for decades. You know, I've got a book deal, a cookbook deal with the LSU Press right now. Obviously, he built an empire off of publishing his cookbooks and doing the things that he's done. And I've gotten to meet him quite a few times. I've been on his radio show before. I've had him on mine. We've spoken on the same panels at conventions and things like that. I've eaten at his restaurant in New Orleans, Revolution. I've been to one of his boucheries at White Oak Plantation, and every time that I've met him, he's always just been so gracious and courteous and kind and appreciative that I'm doing a lot of those things to celebrate Louisiana culinary culture and heritage. And doing all the things that he's done, and certainly the empire that he has built is a lot to look up to and to aspire to be. There are a lot of other chefs that I really admire their culinary styles. Across Louisiana, there's a handful in New Orleans that are starting to be, their level of celebrity chef. Unfortunately, John Besh had a big fallout, but I did work with him a good bit before that. But a lot of the chefs that are at his restaurants or at those restaurants have really gone on to do great things. Donald Link, I think, is one in New Orleans that is really doing a lot with Louisiana food. That's pretty cool. Emeril has always been one of those super charismatic chefs that's kind of gotten to build his own empire like that as well. And then on a national level, those guys are national level as well. But I follow a lot of different chefs, and I follow a lot of their careers. I think one that a lot of people that do the things that I do always admired and loved to watch was Anthony Bourdain. And when I had it was 2011 when the Baton Rouge Business Report, when I was in there 40 under 40, and one of the questions that they asked is like, what's your dream job or something? And I think the quote that was published in that magazine was, I'll take Anthony Bourdain's job. I still would say, like having my own show, traveling around the world, eating and drinking and celebrating and telling the story of people and food and culture is definitely, that would be a dream job. Maybe I would do it in a little bit different way than he did, but still at its heart, he, I think, was a great storyteller and did a tremendous job sharing insights on culture and food around the world with people.
What are you going to do about the weight problem in Louisiana for eating?
The weight problem?
Yeah.
What am I going to do about the weight problem in Louisiana about eating? Well, I clearly need to do something myself. That's a good question. I mean, so Louisiana, obviously, as a whole, is not the healthiest state. Maybe is towards the very bottom of that. We can always thank Mississippi for hanging out down there with us. A big part of that certainly is a lot of our culture, a lot of the things that we eat, the things that we'll put out there. Even, the buffet line today has fried fish on it, and we fry first here. We don't saute or bake or steam fish first. We fry fish first. I don't know what I can do about it. I think that's a great question. I think certainly there have been efforts to create movements to have a healthier Louisiana and to change maybe some of the way that we eat and some of the way that we move. I mean, I think just getting people a little bit more active, myself very much included in that, would be very beneficial. I think a lot of the efforts that are happening right now in Baton Rouge just towards walking and biking friendly streets and things like that, helping people move around a location without the need to have a car, can help change that culture. And that's one thing that I notice whenever I'm in even New Orleans, but especially, the New York or Chicago's or cities like that of the world, is how little I drive and how much more I walk. Because that's actually the easier way to get somewhere a lot of times. You certainly don't want to have to worry about parking. You don't have to worry about all those kind of things. And I think especially right now, I'm obviously live in the heart of the redevelopment of Government Street and the way that the road diet's coming through. And I'm very excited to see the kind of the change of pace of putting pedestrians and cyclists first and kind of putting the motorists second. To a degree, but I think the traffic's actually going to flow really well with the turn lane and then one lane of traffic in each direction. But I think putting in the proper sidewalks and bike lanes and making it that much more pedestrian and bicycle friendly that just helps people get active. I think one problem that we have here is that everybody just wants to drive everywhere, and everybody knows that it's more convenient to just drive everywhere because there's parking right by where you're trying to go. And maybe as those things change a little bit, it could be easier to walk or bike places, and then people will actually walk or bike more. Just a thought. Ma'am. Okay, thank you. Well, thank you for being a fan of Food Network and some of the shows that I've been on, and you asked to tell you about my experience with some of the Food Network shows, and then is Bobby Flay all that he's cracked up to be, which is a great question. So I'll start with Bobby. I actually have one Food Network show that I have filmed but that has not aired yet, and it is an episode of Beat Bobby Flay. So it's a show that comes on Food Network. 2 chefs go head-to-head, and the winner of that gets to go head-to-head with Bobby Flay, challenging him to their signature dish. So that episode should be airing in the next month or two. It'll be on a Thursday night on Food Network, but I won't know which Thursday until like 2 weeks out. So I'm just kind of sitting back waiting for an email saying, all right, your episode's coming up in 2 weeks, and then I'll start promoting it. But that'll be a lot of fun. And that was the second time that I've really worked with Bobby doing that show. Previous to that, Food Network Star obviously was an entire season worth of one Food Network show, but it was 11 episodes that we filmed. We filmed that for about 6 weeks in Los Angeles in early 2015, and then it aired the entire summer of 2015. And if anybody doesn't know, Food Network Star is Food Network's biggest reality competition show. The winner gets their own show on Food Network. A handful of people that are serious talent for Food Network right now have come out of that show. Guy Fieri won season 2. That's really how they discovered him. There's some other people that are fairly active on the network now that came out of that show. And so I was on season 11 of Food Network Star and ended up finishing runner-up. So I was on the show the entire time. Was actually never on the bottom or up for elimination the entire run of it. And then in the very end ended up finishing runner-up. The whole experience was fantastic. I mean, it was nerve-wracking. It was chaotic. It was typical TV production life where it's hurry up and wait. When it's go time, it's go time. When it's not, you have to teach yourself how to relax and how to not let the moment get to you. Fortunately, I had a reasonable amount of TV experience and a lot of radio and just video experience prior to that. And I could tell really early that I was not the most experienced or advanced cook on the show, but I was the most experienced personality on camera and doing those kind of things on the show. And the show it's almost half cooking competition, half doing it on TV competition. And so all of the challenges would involve cooking a dish, but then also somehow presenting that dish to the judges or to an audience or whatever the case might be, doing little vignettes and videos. Basically, you can cook, but can you talk about it on TV? And the radio experience that I have here in Baton Rouge, the Bite and Booze radio show is with Guarantee Broadcasting. It airs on Talk 107.3 every Saturday from 5 to 7 and replays Sundays from 7 to 9. But I've been doing that since April 2011, so almost 8 years now that I've had a 2-hour radio broadcast. And that, I feel like, helped me more than almost anything, because where people stumbled the most was when somebody on the other side of the camera was holding up how much time you have left, and you have to wrap up your talking points and get out in that amount of time. Well, I'd been doing that on the radio for years, having a producer across, just let me know when we're going to commercial break, count me down, give me a sign for 30 seconds, me to know what that 30 seconds feels like for me to wrap up my conversation and take it to a commercial. And so, I mean, from just right at the beginning, I had a hold on that, and other people were just like, oh, I didn't even see the time. I didn't know what I was doing. 10 seconds goes by fast. And yeah, it does, but you have to get used to it. As a whole, as the competition went along, I think everybody got a lot more comfortable, and I had a really great experience because my cast, the season that I was on, everybody got along really well. There was one guy, if anybody remembers, a guy named Matthew at the very beginning of the season, that he got eliminated in the second episode, and after he was gone, there really wasn't much drama. There was a little bit maybe halfway through, but the final 5 people, a group of 5 of us, are all in touch all the time. And then several of the other people that were on there I'm still in touch with and get to see every now and then. And the camaraderie that came out of that has been one of the best lasting experiences that came from the show. Basically the final 4, so Eddie Jackson won that season. The other next 4 of us in line, myself and guys named Alex, who's in DC, Dom from New York, and Arnold, who's in Nashville, we all just cooked this past spring at the James Beard House in New York together. We were invited to go up there and kind of have a Food Network star reunion and do a dinner, collaborative dinner at the James Beard House for the James Beard Foundation. So we got together to do that, and we see each other every now and then. I'll see Alex when I'm in DC for Washington Mardi Gras. He's got some restaurants up there and is doing a great job. But that kind of thing, and just getting those contacts around the country and having friends that are doing things in the food world around the country are certainly great. And then it has given me a level of notoriety that you just can't really get very easily otherwise. That now, anytime that I'm going to, especially something in the food world, any type of cooking competition or convention or conference, I'm going as a speaker, or I'm going as an ambassador of some sort, and kind of have the notoriety behind me, and it makes it a lot of fun for sure. All 3 of you. Yes, sir.
No, I was just going to say, you were talking about how Louisiana food may not be good for you, but it really is good, and that's why people from all over the world come.
Sure.
You were talking about how you began your cooking career as a passion. Now you own your own restaurant and try to attract people from all over the world to your restaurant. Does the competition and the passion conflict? Does the passion drive the competition, or?
Yeah, well, I think passion should drive competition. I think competition in a lot of ways in the food scene drives creativity and should make a food scene better. I think complacency can kind of kill a food movement like that, and having some competition keeps you from being complacent. I mean, I feel like just everybody inside White Star Market, where Government Taco is very friendly and cooperative, but I think when we see each other running some really cool specials and doing different dishes, it inspires us to try a little bit harder ourselves and make sure that we're doing something to attract customers back in as well. So I think some level of competition is very healthy as far as that goes. Yeah, I have that passion for it still, and translating that into my own restaurant hasn't been that tricky. It was one thing that I was worried about, having my own restaurant and where do I go from there, but I have found that it's almost easier in some ways now to go out and support other restaurants and to promote other restaurants and other people that I feel like are doing something positive in the local food scene, because I want my goal still for everything that I'm doing as far as that on the local level is to just get people to support the local restaurants that are doing some really great things. And the more that people do that, the more that our local restaurants get that kind of support and get that kind of growth, the more that we can all do better things. And so that's certainly still a big part of what I do through social media channels, through my radio show. It's definitely not all come eat tacos, come eat tacos, come eat tacos. It's still very much celebrating, and in fact, I really try not to. I kind of treat Government Taco like a sponsor on my show, and I don't talk about them more than what I would talk about any other sponsor, because I feel like the show needs to be about supporting everybody else out there and showcasing the great things that are happening here. Yes, sir.
Louisiana certainly would chase an automotive manufacturing plant or a chemical plant. Headquarters for television certainly would be a non-polluting and interesting aspect to have in the state of Louisiana, particularly with some partially empty towers. Now, from the inside view of your experiences, do you have an opinion of what it would take to move something like that to Louisiana so it's headquartered here with jobs and such?
Yeah, to move real big TV production headquarters here of some sort. One of the first things that they're going to look for, obviously, is talent pool, I feel like Louisiana probably has a decent bit of TV and film industry talent at this point that it could draw from to start that process. A lot of those media companies have been moving a lot of their offices and staff from New York to Atlanta and cities like that lately. And so we're starting to see, some of that transition happening to where they feel like they don't all have to be in New York all the time. They're keeping a presence there, but they don't necessarily have to have an entire tower in New York. That's really expensive real estate. I do feel like there could be a possibility to recruit, especially with the kind of tax credits and things like that we've offered here before. Not that you want to completely give away the farm every time, but there could be ways to recruit some of the executive level and the higher up, really the headquarters for some of those TV station type things here. It'd be an interesting play to see what it would actually take to bring that in.
May I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
We, of course, Louisiana, think we have just this incredible cuisine. I sometimes think that I'm looking at the cuisine from the inside of the gumbo bowl.
Mm-hmm.
But Houston has good food, Atlanta has good food, Dallas, Kansas City. How should we look at our cuisine in terms of excellence compared to other places? Are we the pinnacle of the world, or maybe am I a little wrong?
I think what Louisiana does really well is that we have held on to and we continue to promote and celebrate a lot of those dishes that got us here. And Louisiana really has one of the most unique cuisines out there. As far as looking at the entire world, not everywhere in America has its own native cuisine the way that Louisiana does. We're almost like a different country when it comes to that. You can go to Thailand and eat Thai food. You don't go to Tallahassee, Florida and eat Cajun food. You need to come here. I'm sure there's some people in Tallahassee that can cook some decent Cajun food, but you get my point. So, I think one thing that we have is our own strong native cuisine that really is not replicated super well elsewhere, and so people have to come here for that. Now, there's a lot of other food that we are not good at making at all. There are a lot of other ethnicities out there that have not necessarily traveled here. I've done some Texas barbecue circuit. There's nothing in Louisiana compares to what you can get around Austin and outside Austin, the Texas Hill Country, and the barbecue that you can find there, and especially the quantity of really good barbecue places. And that's kind of what we have here, the quantity of really good places to get Cajun food, to get Creole food, to get those kind of things across South Louisiana. There's nowhere that has gas stations one after another that you can stop and get boudin and crack on and enjoy those kinds of things in our cuisine, and so it's unique. I don't know that I necessarily would say it's the pinnacle, but it is unique, and that's what makes us so special and what should continue to make us a tourist destination, and why we should continue to promote and celebrate our culinary heritage and all of those kind of things, because it is a draw, and it's unlike you can really get anywhere in the world. Now, there are other places in the world that are also doing really great things, but they're not doing the same thing, and that uniqueness certainly defines us. Did you have something in the back?
You pretty much asked my question, but I did have a tail to my question. What do you think of shrimp and grits? Should we keep South Carolina low country trash out of here?
What's the question?
It was loaded a little bit. He asked, what do I think about shrimp and grits, and should we keep that low country trash out of here? Yeah. So I guess maybe I'm on the wrong side of the first statement that I'll make, which is I really like shrimp and grits, and I think it's a great combination. I like shrimp and grits doing a New Orleans style barbecue shrimp, which of course is so loaded in cream and butter that anything would taste good. But grits are nothing but a vehicle to deliver butter and cream and cheese anyway. And so when you combine like that New Orleans style, super buttery, garlicky barbecue shrimp with a good bowl of grits or something, I feel like it works really well. Grits are an interesting Southern food. They are done differently in different places. Some people sweeten them, just like cornbread, I guess. It's one of those very interesting things. Louisiana has had grits and griots as a dish for a while. Obviously, grits are not in any way an un-Louisiana dish. You know, we certainly grow more rice than corn, but we do grow some corn in Louisiana, and to make grits out of that is not, it's not like we truly just imported that from somewhere else and it doesn't belong here. That's what I would say. Now, shrimp and grits, a little bit different, and certainly is that like low country Carolina staple, but I feel like as long as it's done a little bit differently with our twist on it, I'm okay with it.
Would you say it's Cajun? Would you accept that it's Cajun? I don't.
No, I don't feel like it's all that Cajun. I would say it's probably in its Louisiana roots a little bit more Creole than Cajun, as you're kind of defining those two as different food groups, which I think they should be, and why almost any time that I'm traveling around and I see a restaurant outside of Louisiana that like says it's both Cajun and Creole, I almost want to go in and challenge them and be like, well, let me see your gumbo and I'll tell you which one you are. You know, you should be one or the other, not both. And that's not to say that you couldn't be both in some ways, but they are different, and they're different cuisines, and they get lumped together a lot because they're both Louisiana cuisines, but they're not the same thing. And I think traveling around Louisiana and really understanding the difference, well, it's a lot of fun, but also could help educate a lot of people.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
The Syrian Lebanese have been in Louisiana for a couple of 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we have 7 Syrops restaurants in
Yeah.
Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
So how do you explain this gumbo of food that we have in South Louisiana? Cajun and Syrian Lebanese food?
Yeah, you mentioned that the Syrian people and Lebanese people have been in this area for hundreds of years, and you just look at, I mean, I think, I know I heard a statistic before, I can't validate it anywhere right now, but we could probably look it up, but that Baton Rouge has one of the highest per capita ratios of Greek and Lebanese and Mediterranean cuisines like that, if anywhere in the country. And certainly I love all the Syrops and Albasha and Almaza and Romans and you name it. I mean, Atcha is a great one, yeah, the lamb shank, man. Woo. I love living in a city where those are so abundant, and I have traveled before and been like, I didn't realize how unique that was to Baton Rouge for a long time, because it's sometimes it can be very hard to find, and here it's all over the place. And then Baton Rouge also I feel like we have a very strong multicultural cuisine and food scene here that a lot of people maybe don't realize, because for a long time they kind of a lot of them lived in their own little pockets, and still the only, maybe not the only place, but most of the Vietnamese restaurants are all congregated together on Florida around Sherwood Forest, right? And like you have to go out there to get that. And as a LSU student, I did not venture out to Sherwood in Florida very often. I would imagine most people don't, and a lot of times people will live in Baton Rouge for a while before they even realize it's there. And you don't realize necessarily when you're living in your own little Baton Rouge bubble, wherever that might be, whether it's, you know, college students in their bubble or people that just work downtown and don't know much other than whatever their commute is to get downtown and back. But they're so, Baton Rouge is a large city. I think living here, sometimes it can feel like a small town, and traveling to truly huge cities, the Houstons of the world or things like that, you realize how small Baton Rouge maybe is. But when you take a step back and you realize that there's a lot going on in Baton Rouge when you look at the whole thing, and when you experience just our entire food scene, there's a lot more going on here than you realize. And so certainly the Syrian and the Lebanese and those restaurants that are very pervasive, that we have Thai and we have Vietnamese, we have a few ramen shops now. Sushi has been, you know, huge in Baton Rouge for a few decades now. It seems that there's sushi shops everywhere. Maybe that's not just a Baton Rouge thing. Maybe that's countrywide, but it is cool to see. And I always applaud anybody that's trying to bring in any other type of cuisine to Baton Rouge. There's certainly some that I would love to see here, some like Korean barbecue and some things like that. But you know, it's fun. I love that about Baton Rouge, that we have so much here, and the history of all the people that have come into Louisiana, and obviously, you know, speaking of Vietnamese population that settled in New Orleans and that just went right into the seafood industry because it was so similar, and the French backgrounds and all that. It's just kind of a perfect fit. Yes, sir.
The north of I-10 and I-12, Lee's and LeCompte's plate lunches
Yep.
based on bacon, 6-inch pies, and Natchitoches meat pies. Is that good cuisine? Should that be included in a Louisianian's diet?
Every now and then. Yeah, those icebox pies at Lee's lunchroom, I mean, it's hard to say no to one of those. Anytime I'm driving through that part of the state, that's some good stuff. And then Natchitoches meat pies, I mean, that's what would a wedding reception be without some meat pies these days? So I think that's been a great part of the culture when you travel around a little bit. And certainly, you know, one thing that I have opened up my eyes to, and obviously there are different cultures all around Louisiana and New Orleans and the areas outside of New Orleans, but that are really that South Louisiana seafood heavy swamp, shrimp and petroleum festival kind of stuff. And then you get into real Cajun country and Acadiana. It's just different, right? Baton Rouge is different. North Louisiana is different, but I really have been able to travel through those places enough now to where I have an appreciation for their cultures. And there is some fantastic food in Shreveport right now, and there's some really good stuff happening in Monroe. And there are some of those gems, like a Lee's lunchroom kind of thing, in small towns throughout. And you get to Natchitoches or Zwolle, or you find these places that have this like culinary culture of their own, and that have contributed to the larger portrait of Louisiana food. I mean, I think they all belong, for sure. Do you have something?
Time for one more question.
Yes, sir.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
I came in just ask one question.
Okay.
All over Louisiana, I can look for it. Is there anywhere to when I was in Louisiana where I can find some good Jamaican jerk chicken?
Where can he find some Jamaican jerk chicken? We did a jerk chicken pop-up at Tin Roof Brewing Company. I had my friend Shelly Flash, who was on MasterChef, who lives in Brooklyn, but by way of Jamaica. She came into town and did it. And, you know, I want to say there was somebody somewhere in Baton Rouge that was trying to start something up related to doing some jerk chicken on a more regular basis. And I need to look for that, because I think there was something out there, but I haven't had it yet. So I'm not sure. It's got to go to Jamaica. That's what I need to do too. Moons and Dubak, I have not.
You need to go there.
Okay.
I'll tell you about it.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah, the Caribbean influence on Louisiana is one that there are so many striking resemblances to a lot of our cuisines, but I don't know, it's almost weird to me that there's not more places in Louisiana to go eat Caribbean style food. I've spent a good bit of time in the Dominican Republic, and you know, the rice and the beans and the chicken and the gravies and all those things, like you can see so many similarities, and then but you can't actually get I don't know, where there's a restaurant by Barksdale Air Force Base in Shreveport that is an authentic Dominican restaurant, and it's legit, but that's the only place in Louisiana that I've found that actually serves true Dominican food. So Jamaican's kind of similar to that. All right, well, thank you all.